Every decision you make creates a branching point. Right now, infinite versions of your life exist simultaneously across quantum timelines. There's a reality where you've already achieved everything you desire, a timeline where your dream relationship is flourishing, where financial abundance flows naturally, where your purpose is fully expressed. That's not fantasy, that's quantum mechanics. The many worlds interpretation suggests every possible outcome of every decision exists in parallel timelines. Most people never learn they can access these alternate realities. They stay locked in one timeline, repeating the same patterns, convinced their current trajectory is the only option. But quantum timeline navigation changes everything. It's not about creating a new future from scratch. It's about aligning with the timeline where your desires already exist. So let's talk about something that's going to fundamentally transform how you think about time, possibility, and manifestation. Your future is not a single predetermined path stretching out before you. It's a field of infinite possibilities, all existing simultaneously in what quantum physics calls parallel timelines. And here's what changes everything. You're not trapped in one timeline, watching it unfold moment by moment with no control. You're a consciousness capable of navigating between timelines, of shifting from one probability track to another, of literally jumping from a reality where your desires are distant to a reality where they're already manifested. This isn't science fiction, this is quantum theory applied to your lived experience. And in manifestation, we believe this is how reality actually works. Today we are exploring 4 profound techniques for quantum timeline navigation. 4 methods that will help you access parallel realities, align with your desired future, and master timeline jumping in ways that transform your entire manifestation practice. And I need to tell you up front, the 4th technique is about clearing the psychological patterns that keep you anchored in unwanted timelines. It connects directly to quantum psychology principles that I want you to explore deeply after this video. But first, let me explain what quantum timelines actually are, because this is where cutting-edge physics meets ancient mystical wisdom and what we believe in the world of manifestation. Quantum timeline theory emerges from the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics proposed by physicist Hugh Everett in 1957. Here's the basic idea. Every time a quantum event occurs, every time a particle could go left or right, be spin up or spin down, the universe doesn't choose one outcome, it branches. Both outcomes happen each in its own parallel timeline. Now, Everett was talking about subatomic particles, but the implications are staggering. If this is true at the quantum level, and if our macroscopic world emerges from quantum processes, then every decision you make, every choice point in your life, creates a branching. There's a timeline where you took the job and a timeline where you didn't, a timeline where you pursued the relationship and a timeline where you walked away. All of them exist, all of them are real, just in parallel dimensions you're not currently experiencing. Now, mainstream physics treats these parallel timelines as theoretical, existing but inaccessible. But in quantum manifestation, we believe something radical. Your consciousness isn't trapped in one timeline, it's capable of shifting between them. And the mechanism for this shifting is what we call timeline manifestation. The process of aligning your frequency, your beliefs, your emotional state, and your actions with the timeline you prefer, causing your awareness to migrate from one probability track to another. You're not creating a new future from nothing. You're tuning into a future reality that already exists and collapsing your experience into that timeline. Let me share something that completely transformed how I understood this. Think about a moment in your life when everything suddenly changed. Maybe you met someone who altered your entire trajectory. Maybe you made a spontaneous decision that opened doors you couldn't have imagined. Maybe you had an insight that shifted your whole perspective. In those moments, you didn't gradually evolve into a new reality. You quantum leaped. You jumped timelines. The version of your life before that moment and the version after, existed on different probability tracks, and something about your consciousness, your readiness, your alignment allowed you to make that jump. That's timeline jumping, and it's happening more often than you realize. The question is, can you do it deliberately? Can you consciously navigate to the timeline where your desires are already fulfilled? In manifestation, we believe the answer is absolutely yes. And the key is understanding how quantum timelines work and learning to work with them intentionally. So let's break down the quantum theory of multiple timelines, because when you understand the framework, the navigation techniques become exponentially more powerful. First principle is that all possible futures exist now, not in some distant time, now. In parallel quantum states, time, as physicists have discovered, is not what we experience it to be. Einstein showed that past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. What this means for timeline manifestation is profound. The future where you're financially abundant exists right now as a probability wave. The future where you're in your ideal relationship exists right now. The future where you're healthy, fulfilled, and purposeful exists right now. These aren't potentials that might develop over time. They're parallel realities existing in the quantum field. And your consciousness, through the act of sustained focus, emotional alignment, and coherent intention, collapses your experience toward one timeline or another. You're not waiting for the future to arrive. You're selecting which future timeline to merge with. Second principle is that your frequency determines which timeline you access. Everything in the universe is vibration, energy oscillating at different frequencies. And in quantum physics, we know that systems resonate with matching frequencies. A tuning fork at 440 Hz will cause another 440 Hz tuning fork to vibrate even without physical contact. They're entangled through frequency resonance. In quantum timeline navigation, the same principle applies. Every timeline has a frequency signature. The timeline where you're abundant has a different frequency than the timeline where you're struggling. The timeline where you're confident has a different frequency than the timeline where you're insecure. And your consciousness, through your dominant thoughts, emotions, and beliefs, broadcasts a frequency. The timeline you experience is determined by which frequency you're resonating with. This is why emotional state is so crucial in manifestation. You're not just feeling good to feel good, you're tuning your frequency to match the timeline you want to access. When you generate the emotions of having your desire, gratitude, joy, fulfillment, confidence, you're broadcasting the frequency of the timeline where those desires are real. And through quantum resonance, your consciousness begins to entangle with that timeline. You're not attracting the future to you, you're migrating your awareness to the future reality where it already exists. Third principle is that parallel realities are separated by probability, not distance. In classical thinking, the future is far away, separated from the present by time. But in quantum timeline theory, all moments exist now, and what separates different timelines is probability, not temporal distance. Some timelines are highly probable based on your current momentum. If you keep thinking, feeling, and acting the way you have been, certain futures are very likely. Other timelines are less probable, representing quantum leaps, significant departures from your current trajectory. But here's the key. Probability is not fixed. It's fluid. And consciousness, through focused intention and coherent action, can shift probability in your favor. You can make an improbable timeline more probable and eventually collapse it into your lived experience. This is backed by research from the Global Consciousness Project at Princeton University, which showed that focused collective intention could influence random number generators, shifting probability away from chance. If consciousness can influence quantum randomness at a measurable level, then in manifestation, we believe individual consciousness can influence personal probability fields, navigating toward preferred timelines even when they seem statistically unlikely. You're not bound by the probable. You can access the improbable through sustained coherence. Fourth principle is that timeline jumping happens at decision points. While all timelines exist simultaneously, your experience of them is sequential. You move through your life making decisions, and each decision is a potential branching point. Some decisions are minor, creating timelines that quickly reconverge. Other decisions are major, creating significant divergence. In quantum timeline navigation, you learn to recognize these decision points and make choices from the timeline you're aligning with, not from your current circumstances. Most people make decisions based on their past and present, but timeline jumping requires making decisions based on your desired future. You choose as the version of yourself living in the preferred timeline would choose. And that choice becomes the bridge that carries your consciousness from one probability track to another. So now let's talk about parallel realities and future possibilities practically, because understanding that they exist is one thing, but learning how to perceive and interact with them is where the real power emerges. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for parallel timelines comes from quantum computing. Quantum computers use something called qubits, which exist in superposition, processing multiple possibilities simultaneously. In a sense, they're accessing parallel computational timelines to solve problems. And while we're not computers, in manifestation, we believe consciousness operates similarly. Your mind doesn't just process one linear reality. It has access to multiple probability streams simultaneously, and you can learn to consciously tap into that. Have you ever had the experience of feeling like you're living in two realities at once? You're going through your physical day, but internally, you're sensing a different possibility, a parallel version where things are different, better, more aligned. That's not imagination. In quantum timeline terms, that's your consciousness becoming aware of a parallel reality. And the more you tune into that other timeline, the more your frequency shifts to match it, and the more likely you are to experience synchronicities, opportunities, and shifts that pull you toward that reality. Your consciousness is a bridge between timelines, and awareness is the first step in navigation. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this beautifully in his work on creating from the quantum field. He describes how when you meditate and elevate your emotional state while visualizing your desired reality, you're no longer living in linear time. You're accessing what he calls the eternal present moment, the quantum field where all possibilities exist. And from that space, you can literally select which timeline to invest your energy in. You're not hoping your timeline improves. You're consciously choosing to align with a timeline where improvement has already occurred. That's the fundamental shift in quantum timeline manifestation. Let me give you the first practical technique for quantum timeline navigation. I call this the parallel reality mapping exercise. This is about making the invisible visible, identifying which timelines are available to you, and consciously choosing which one to align with. Here's how it works. Take a piece of paper and draw a horizontal line across the middle. This represents your current timeline, the probability track you're on based on your current momentum. Now, above that line, draw another line representing your ideal timeline, the future reality where everything you desire has manifested. Below your current line, draw a line representing your fear-based timeline, the future you want to avoid. Now, for each timeline, write specific details. For your ideal timeline, describe what your life looks like. What are you doing? Who are you with? How do you feel? What have you manifested? Be specific. For your current trajectory timeline, honestly assess where you're headed if nothing changes. And for your fear-based timeline, acknowledge what you're afraid might happen. This isn't to give energy to fear, but to make unconscious concerns conscious so they don't operate in the background. Once you have all three timelines mapped, here's the quantum shift. Close your eyes and feel into each timeline. Start with your current trajectory. Feel what it feels like to continue on this path. Notice the emotions, the sensations in your body. Then feel into the fear-based timeline. Notice the contraction, the heaviness. And finally, feel into the ideal timeline. Notice the expansion, the lightness, the excitement. What you're doing is tuning into the frequency signature of each timeline. And here's what's powerful. Once you've felt all three, you can consciously choose. You place your attention, your emotional energy, and your intention on the ideal timeline. You declare, this is the reality I'm aligning with, this is the timeline I'm navigating toward. And from that moment forward, every decision you make, you ask yourself, does this choice align with my ideal timeline or my current trajectory? You use your desired future as the compass for present moment decisions. That's how you navigate. That's how you quantum jump. The second technique is future reality anchoring. This is based on the principle that parallel timelines exist now, not in some distant future. So you can access the frequency of your desired timeline in the present moment and anchor it into your nervous system. Here's the practice. Sit quietly and close your eyes. Take several deep breaths to center yourself. Now, instead of visualizing your desired future as something far away, imagine that it exists right now in a parallel dimension. You can't see it with your physical eyes, but it's there. As real as the reality you're currently experiencing, it's just vibrating at a different frequency. Now, imagine that you can tune into that parallel timeline like tuning into a radio station. You're shifting your Feel the emotions, feel the sensations, feel the confidence, the peace, the abundance, the love, whatever characterizes that timeline, feel it fully. And as you feel it, breathe it into your body. You're anchoring this frequency into your nervous system. You're teaching your body what it feels like to exist in the preferred timeline. Do this for 15 to 20 minutes daily. And here's what happens at the quantum level, according to manifestation principles. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between actual experience and vividly imagined experience. The same neural networks fire, the same neurochemicals release. So when you practice being in your ideal timeline, you're not fantasizing. You're training your biology to resonate with that frequency. And as your body becomes familiar with that frequency, your decisions, your perceptions, and your actions naturally begin to align. You start behaving like someone living in that timeline. And behavior that matches the timeline pulls you toward it. You're not waiting to jump, you're jumping through sustained frequency alignment. If you felt even 1% more aligned after this, subscribe and hit the bell icon. Let's grow together. If this hits 1000 likes, I'll drop another part with secrets from quantum physics that will blow you away. This isn't just a channel, it's a community of conscious creators. Join our manifestation club on gogetter.au and become part of a global community transforming how we navigate reality. We're not just learning about timelines, we're actively jumping. We're not just understanding parallel realities, we're living them. The third technique is decision point timeline shifting. This is about recognizing that every significant decision is a branching point where timelines diverge, and learning to make choices from your desired future rather than your current circumstances. Most people make decisions based on their past experiences and present limitations, but that keeps them locked in the same timeline. Timeline jumping requires making decisions from the future you're aligning with, even when it feels uncomfortable or illogical based on present evidence. Here's how it works. When you face a decision, pause before reacting habitually. Close your eyes and imagine yourself existing in your ideal timeline, the parallel reality where everything you desire has already manifested. From that place, from the consciousness of your future self, ask, what would I choose? How would I respond? What action would I take? And then, this is crucial, take that action in your present reality, even if it doesn't make logical sense based on your current circumstances. You're creating a bridge between timelines through aligned action. Every choice that matches your ideal timeline pulls you toward it. Every choice that matches your current limitations keeps you anchored where you are. Let me share something personal. There was a moment in my life when I was offered two opportunities. One was safe, logical, aligned with my current circumstances and past patterns. The other was risky, required massive faith, and aligned with the future I deeply desired but hadn't manifested yet. My logical mind said, choose the safe option. But I practiced this technique. I closed my eyes, tuned into the timeline where I was fully expressed, abundant, and purposeful, and I asked my future self what to choose. The answer was clear: choose the risk. So I did. And that single decision was a timeline jump. Within months, everything in my life reorganized. Opportunities appeared that wouldn't have been available on the safe timeline. Connections formed that only existed on the risk timeline. I didn't gradually evolve into a better situation. I quantum jumped through a single aligned choice. That's the power of decision point timeline shifting. You're not waiting for circumstances to improve before you make better choices. You're making choices that match your ideal timeline, and those choices shift the circumstances. You lead with decision, and reality follows. That's quantum timeline navigation in action. In the comments, drop one word that represents the timeline you're choosing to align with. Maybe it's abundance, maybe it's love, maybe it's freedom, maybe it's purpose, maybe it's joy. Whatever captures the essence of your ideal timeline, write it down. Let that word be a declaration, a frequency beacon you're broadcasting into the quantum field. Your word matters because intention shapes probability. When you declare your chosen timeline, you're collapsing quantum potential in that direction. Now we are moving into the fourth and most transformative technique, and this is where everything converges. This is about clearing the psychological blocks that keep you anchored in unwanted timelines. Because here's what I've discovered through years of manifestation work. You can practice timeline navigation techniques, you can visualize parallel realities, you can make aligned decisions, but if you have unconscious beliefs, unresolved traumas, or limiting identity structures operating in the background, they act like gravitational anchors. They keep pulling you back to familiar timelines even when you're trying to jump to new ones. And this is where quantum psychology becomes essential. You need to reprogram the subconscious patterns that determine your default timeline before you can sustain a quantum jump to a preferred one. So let me give you the advanced timeline liberation technique. This combines quantum timeline work with deep psychological reprogramming. Sit quietly and close your eyes. Begin with coherent breathing, 5 counts in, 5 counts out, for several minutes. Once you're centered, bring to mind the timeline you want to escape from, the pattern you keep repeating, the future you're trying to avoid. Don't push it away, observe it, and ask yourself, what belief system is keeping me locked in this timeline? What unconscious pattern is gravitationally pulling me here? Maybe it's I'm not worthy of more. Maybe it's success requires struggle. Maybe it's I always sabotage good things. Whatever surfaces, acknowledge it without judgment. Now, here's the quantum psychology piece. That belief isn't a truth. It's a collapsed probability based on past observation. And just like quantum particles can be observed into new states, your beliefs can be reobserved and recollapsed. So take that limiting belief and consciously introduce its quantum opposite. If the belief is I'm not worthy, the opposite is my worthiness is inherent, not earned. If the belief is success requires struggle, the opposite is success flows naturally when I'm aligned. Feel the difference. You're not arguing with the old belief. You're introducing a new possibility into your consciousness programming. Now, visualize yourself releasing the old belief. See it as energy leaving your body, dissolving into light. And as you release it, feel the gravitational pull of the unwanted timeline weakening. You're no longer anchored there. Then, consciously install the new belief. See it as light entering your body, integrating into your cells, your neural pathways, your energy field. Feel yourself becoming free to navigate to new timelines that were previously inaccessible because the old belief blocked them. Stay in this process for 20 minutes, working with each major limiting belief that's been keeping you trapped. And this is why I want you to watch the quantum psychology video after this. Because what we're touching on here about reprogramming limiting beliefs, about clearing psychological blocks, about installing new identity structures, that's the foundation of successful timeline jumping. You can't sustain a quantum leap to a higher timeline if your subconscious programming is aligned with a lower one. You'll keep getting pulled back. But when you combine timeline navigation techniques with deep psychological quantum work, you create permanent shifts. You don't just visit better timelines temporarily, you relocate your consciousness there permanently. That video is already up. Click and watch it now, because it's the missing piece that makes timeline manifestation actually work long term. Now let me share some advanced timeline quantum methods, because once you've mastered the fundamentals, there are deeper layers to explore. One of the most powerful is working with timeline quantum entanglement. In quantum physics, entangled particles remain connected regardless of distance or time. In timeline manifestation, we believe your consciousness in different timelines is similarly entangled. The version of you in the ideal timeline isn't separate from the version of you here now. You're quantum entangled across parallel realities. And you can use that entanglement to receive information, guidance, and energy from your future self. Here's a practice I call Future Self Quantum Communion. Sit in meditation and imagine a bridge of light connecting your current self to your future self in the ideal timeline. See that future version of yourself clearly. They've already manifested everything you desire. They've already overcome the obstacles you're facing. They're living the life you're working toward. Now, instead of just visualizing them, open yourself to receive from them. Ask them for guidance. What do I need to know right now? What action should I take next? What am I not seeing? And then be quiet, listen, feel. Often insights will arise. A knowing, a feeling, an intuition. That's not. I've used this practice countless times when facing difficult decisions or challenges. And the guidance that comes through is always more wise, more clear, more aligned than my current moment thinking. Because my future self has already navigated what I'm navigating, they have the perspective I don't have yet, and through quantum entanglement, I can access that perspective now. It collapses the learning curve. It accelerates the timeline jump. Instead of figuring everything out through trial and error, I receive wisdom from the timeline where I've already succeeded. Another advanced method is timeline momentum shifting. In physics, momentum is mass times velocity. An object in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted upon by an external force. In quantum timeline navigation, you have momentum on your current timeline. Your habitual thoughts, emotions, actions, they create velocity in a particular direction. And that momentum will carry you toward a predictable future unless you introduce a force strong enough to shift the trajectory. Most people try to shift timelines through small actions while maintaining the same mental and emotional momentum, and it doesn't work. You need to interrupt the momentum at its source, consciousness itself. Here's how you do it. For 1 week, commit to a complete pattern interrupt. Choose one habitual pattern that represents your current timeline. Maybe it's checking your bank account with anxiety every morning. Maybe it's complaining about your circumstances. Maybe it's scrolling social media mindlessly. Whatever pattern is most representative of your current momentum, choose it. And for 1 week, every time you catch yourself about to engage in that pattern, stop. Don't just stop the behavior. Stop and consciously shift your state. Take 3 deep breaths. Generate gratitude. Visualize your ideal timeline. You're using the moment of impulse as a trigger for timeline realignment. What happens is profound. That pattern has momentum. It's connected to neural pathways, emotional patterns, and behavioral loops. When you interrupt it consciously and redirect your energy toward your ideal timeline instead, you're applying force to shift momentum. And physics tells us that a small force, applied consistently over time, creates massive shifts in trajectory. After 1 week of this practice, you'll notice your default state has changed. You're no longer being pulled as strongly toward your old timeline. You've created space for a new trajectory to establish itself. That's timeline momentum shifting. Let's also explore the role of synchronicity in timeline navigation, because synchronicities are not random coincidences. In quantum timeline theory, they're evidence that you're successfully navigating toward a new probability track. When you're locked in one timeline, reality is predictable. Cause and effect are linear, but when you're shifting between timelines, you enter a transitional phase where probabilities become more fluid. And synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, unexpected connections, perfectly timed opportunities, these are markers that you're in the quantum zone. You're between timelines, and reality is reorganizing around your new chosen trajectory. Carl Jung called this synchronicity a causal connection through meaning. Events that are connected not by cause and effect, but by significance and timing. And in manifestation, we believe synchronicities increase dramatically when you're actively navigating timelines, because you're working with quantum probability rather than classical determinism. So when you start seeing more synchronicities, don't dismiss them as luck, recognize them as feedback. They're telling you you're successfully shifting. Your consciousness is entangling with the new timeline. Reality is responding to your frequency change. Follow the synchronicities. They are breadcrumbs leading you to your desired future reality. I want to share something about timeline collapse points, because not all moments are equal when it comes to timeline navigation. There are certain moments in your life when the field is more fluid, when quantum possibilities are more accessible, when timeline jumps are easier. These collapse points often occur during major life transitions, endings and beginnings, losses and births, deaths and rebirths. When something ends, your old timeline loses momentum. There's a moment of openness, of quantum superposition, before a new timeline establishes itself. And if you're conscious during those moments, you can choose which new timeline to collapse into rather than defaulting to familiar patterns. Pay attention to your life right now. Are you in a transition? Have you recently experienced an ending? A relationship? A job? A living situation? A belief system? If so, you're in a collapse, and the choices you make in the next days and weeks will determine which timeline becomes dominant. Don't waste collapse points by unconsciously falling back into old patterns. Use them. Consciously choose the timeline you want. Make decisions from that place. Act from that identity, and you'll find that reality reorganizes around your choice with surprising speed. Collapse points are quantum opportunities. They're moments when the universe is asking you, which future do you choose? Answer clearly. Now, I want to address something important. Timeline jumping isn't about escaping responsibility or avoiding challenges. It's not spiritual bypassing. Every timeline has challenges. The difference is, in your ideal timeline, the challenges are aligned with your growth and purpose. They're meaningful rather than meaningless. So you're not jumping to a timeline with no problems. You're jumping to a timeline where the problems are the right problems, the ones that evolve you toward your highest expression. That's an important distinction. Because some people hear about timeline manifestation and think it's about creating a perfect life with no difficulty. But growth requires challenge. Evolution requires friction. The goal is to align with a timeline where your challenges are purposeful, where your struggles are contributing to your becoming, rather than just creating suffering. In the comments, share one commitment you're making today to navigate toward your ideal timeline. Maybe it's making one decision from your future self. Maybe it's interrupting one habitual pattern. Maybe it's practicing future reality anchoring for 15 minutes. Whatever it is, declare it, because declaration in manifestation is powerful. When you speak your intention publicly, you're sending a signal through the quantum field that you're serious about this timeline jump. Your commitment matters because sustained focus collapses probability. So let's bring this all together. Your future is not singular. It's not a predetermined path you're walking toward. It's a field of infinite possibilities existing simultaneously in parallel quantum timelines. And you're not trapped in one timeline, forced to experience whatever unfolds. You are a navigating consciousness capable of shifting from one probability track to another, of literally quantum jumping from timelines of limitation to timelines of abundance, from timelines of struggle to timelines of flow, from timelines of confusion to timelines of clarity and purpose. That's not wishful thinking. That's quantum mechanics applied to your lived experience. The techniques we've covered today, parallel reality mapping, future reality anchoring, decision point timeline shifting, and timeline liberation through psychological clearing, these are your navigation tools. They're how you move from unconscious drifting through one probable future to conscious navigation toward your ideal future reality. Use them consistently, make them part of your daily practice, because timeline manifestation isn't a one-time jump, it's a sustained frequency alignment. You keep choosing your ideal timeline through thought, emotion, belief, and action until your consciousness fully collapses into that probability track and it becomes your stable reality. And here's what I want you to deeply understand. The timeline where you're living your dream life, where you've manifested your desires, where you're expressing your full potential, that timeline already exists. Right now, in parallel probability. It's not something you need to create from scratch. It's not years away. It exists now, just at a different frequency. Your only job is to align with it, to tune your consciousness to its frequency, to make choices that match it, to embody the emotions of living in it. And through that sustained alignment, your experience will shift, not gradually. Quantum leaps happen suddenly. One moment you're in one timeline, the next you're in another. And looking back, you'll realize everything changed at a decision point. A moment when you chose differently. Make sure you share this video with someone who's ready to understand that they're not trapped in their current trajectory. You're not just sharing information, you're sharing liberation. You're spreading the understanding that reality is far more fluid than we've been taught, that quantum timelines exist, that timeline jumping is possible, that we have far more creative power than conventional wisdom allows. For you, it may be just sharing, but for someone else, it might be the catalyst that shifts their entire understanding of what's possible. Be that catalyst today. And I want to leave you with this final thought. Every moment is a choice point. Every thought, every emotion, every action, it's contributing to your timeline momentum. You're either reinforcing your current trajectory or shifting toward a new one. There's no neutral. Even staying the same is a choice to remain on your current timeline. So the question isn't whether you're navigating timelines. You are constantly. The question is, are you navigating consciously or unconsciously? Are you choosing your future reality or defaulting to your past patterns? You have the power to access parallel timelines where your dreams already exist. You have the capacity to shift your frequency to match those realities. You have the ability to make aligned choices that bridge you from one probability track to another. And you have the understanding now that your future isn't something distant and uncertain. It's something present and accessible, existing in quantum superposition, waiting for your consciousness to collapse into it. The only question is, will you use this power? Will you commit to the practices? Will you trust that quantum timeline navigation is real, that parallel realities exist, that you can jump from where you are to where you want to be? I believe you will, because you're still here. You've absorbed this entire exploration of quantum timelines. And that tells me something. It tells me you're ready for the jump. You're ready to stop accepting your current trajectory as inevitable and start consciously navigating toward your ideal future reality. You're ready to become a timeline jumper, a reality navigator, a conscious creator working with quantum probability rather than being subject to it. So start today. Choose one technique. Practice it daily for 30 days. And watch what happens. Watch how synchronicities increase. Watch how opportunities appear. Watch how your entire experience shifts when you realize you're not trapped in linear time. You're dancing with quantum possibilities. And remember, after you finish this, watch the quantum psychology video, because everything we've talked about today about timeline navigation, about accessing parallel realities, about quantum jumping, it all becomes exponentially more powerful when you clear the psychological blocks that anchor you to unwanted timelines. Your limiting beliefs, your unresolved patterns, your identity structures, they create gravitational pull toward familiar timelines even when you're trying to jump to new ones. That video gives you the tools to release those anchors, to reprogram your consciousness at the deepest level, to become psychologically free to navigate any timeline you choose. It's the companion practice that makes timeline manifestation sustainable. Click and watch it now. Your ideal future reality is waiting in parallel probability, and the version of you capable of living it is ready to emerge. Go discover how to clear the path for that emergence. Your quantum timeline journey is just beginning.